So, in this episode of Memory Card, today I want to talk about Final Fantasy. Let's just say Final Fantasy, the series as I remember it. So, my first encounter with Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation, and it was just one of these games that I saw and I thought this looks like it could be good fun. I had no idea that it was originally at the time that it was one of these really long, massive games that had 3 or 4 discs. Um, it just, it seemed for some reason it seemed to appeal to me. I suppose a game that's got the word fantasy in its title is always going to have some form of appeal. But the one thing that kind of puzzled me was because up until this point I'd never heard of these games. I didn't realize that they'd been around on the Nintendo consoles, and the whole naming number nonsense that was going on between ourselves in the UK and in America and over in Japan. Kind of the whole story behind all those numberings. For me, it was just, this is seven. Okay, where's one, two, three, four, five, and six? But once I kind of got over that and kind of didn't bother trying to reconcile that in my mind, I played seven, and there were some odd moments in there. The music was great. The music stood out. I had no idea what I was doing. I never really played a proper RPG and a proper kind of leveling up RPG before. Um, I kind of no idea what I was doing, where I was going, how to actually play these games. I just thought this looks kind of cool. I want to play it. That's why I had it. That's why I wanted to play it. Um, so, of course, I didn't get that far. I maybe didn't have the patience. I didn't maybe have the skill to actually beat the game. But I had really good fun playing it. It was one of these games where I was like, okay, it's got a learning curve to it, but that's okay because it's good fun. It's a fighting game, but you're taking turns. Um, so that was the one weird thing you have to kind of get your head around, I suppose, with these games when you first play them. Is I've played beat 'em ups, I've played Street Fighter, I've played Tekken. The guys can move, they can block, they can jump. Why can't these guys do that? And of course, it's a strategy game. You've got to strategize. Okay, you can hit the enemy, but they can also hit you. You have to try and find a way of beating that enemy in as few shots as possible, without taking a lot of damage. And you've got to do this time and time again. I got to the first boss, or the first, I suppose you'd call it boss, mini boss, area monster, um, enemy that required some form of proper strategy to beat. And I think that I played that fight, I suppose testament to these games, how good they were, was that I played that battle, that fight so many times, I knew the pattern. I knew what the pattern was of its attacks, so I knew when to attack it, when to heal myself. I had it down. It was a case of I actually ended up having a strategy, and that was the first time I actually fought anything that really I had a strategy. I managed to come up with a strategy for beating it, and that was just, it was one of these things. Where, yes, I finally win. I have beaten this. Okay, it's a robot, but I win. And then later on, there were other moments where the game just kind of, you're like, what the hell's going on? Why? I'm not going to go too much into it, I suppose, but because this is my memories of the series. Um, I might at some point do a whole video just on Final Fantasy VII, but for me, for that game, I didn't really get that far, but it, but whenever I did get far enough, it became a personal victory. It was, yes, I've succeeded. Um, I played 8. I think I borrowed 8 from someone. Um, 8 was just, we've gone from kind of, it was from a fantasy game where the characters are larger than life with big hair, um, and you've got kind of uh, massive swords, and all of a sudden you've got this gun blade. You're going, a gun and a sword? Okay, what is this? How does this work? What would this just makes no sense? Um, I was supposed to suspend disbelief. Um, there was up until the point when you go into there's the training gardens and you're fighting dinosaurs. And you're going right, okay. Then there were with that game there was the junctioning system. The system I was used to from Final Fantasy VII was you had an item that had each item had little slots. You could attach magic, or the game called it materia. You could attach materia to your weapons. If the slots were attached to each other, then they were you think you could chain they were chained together and it altered their effect or something like that. But it was a fairly simple system. You attached the materia to your items, and that gave you the ability to use that materia in battle. And all of a sudden, there was this whole junctioning system on 8 that kind of was just you needed a PhD to understand and to work. And for someone of my age at the time, if those are the people who are maybe the same age as me or a bit older, a bit younger, picking this game up, I was like, I'm still in school. I'm doing homework, and now my game is giving me homework. I have to learn how this works. And inevitably, you would junction this pathetic magic to your strongest stat, and this really useful magic, powerful magic to your weakest stat, and you had no idea what was going on. And then there was the dog you could give a name to, I think, and you had these books and allowed you to teach the dog new tricks and new attacks. And there was one point where one of your characters put the dog on this wrist-mounted launcher thing and fired the dog, and you're just like, okay, this game is weird. The whole seed thing, for me, it was just thumbs down. I didn't enjoy it. It was too complicated, and it put me off. Then along came 9, and I laughed at it. I was like, this guy looks like a scarecrow. This mage thing looks like a scarecrow. There's the Tin Man. There's Dorothy. This is the Wizard of Oz. This is so the Wizard of Oz. This is a video game. This is a fantasy video game version of Wizard of Oz. This is what this is. But I guess I was wrong. I really enjoyed that game. When I finally got over this whole Wizard of Oz thing and played it, it was just so much fun. There was nothing about this sea of confusion, this nonsense you had on 8. This was a simpler system, which I really liked, where you gathered, you had your items, you equipped your item, and then each item had magic and had abilities attached to it. And if you gained it, and not only could you level up your characters, but you could level up you could level up and learn the abilities. So if you gained enough points, you learnt that ability and you kept the ability. So if you de-equip the item and put a new item on, you then had that ability, which is what I did. I remember grinding for a long time on that game, especially when you had so the initial stabs or staves or whatever you want to call it, the initial magic things for your mage, who's called VD, is diminutive little mage, who I'm guessing was I don't want to go too much into the story here, but was like Client from Ratchet and Clank was a defect. Was something that was created um, by somebody else, but was this small diminutive one where all the others were quite big, and he was kind of cast aside, trying to sort of understand his place in the world, really, where he came from, why he was what he was. Um, but he was became the one that I'd mocked the most originally, became my favourite character because he had all these high level magic moves. And I remember at one point there was the second level magic, so there was fire, then it was fire aga, weird sort of names that you could have more powerful fire. To most folk, fire is fire. But in these universes, you could have varying degrees of strength of fire, or ice moves, or lightning moves. And I remember there were these weapons which allowed you to use the second tier magic. But up until this point, a lot of the items would improve your stats or weaken your stats. And for him, the other magical items, you know, they had some bearing on his stats. But these the, whatever the word, the fire staff, this ice staff, and this lightning staff, all did roughly the same for the stats. They didn't really, give you the same kind of buff or a nerf. And but they all had the second tier magic. So what I did was I went off and I backed loads of enemies and I let him learn all the second tier magic. And then there was this one of those staff a little bit later on which allowed you to do, of course, there was a magic spell called Bio. And then the update wasn't Bio and then Bioaga, which would have been, I suppose, would have fitted in with the others, but it was just called Bio 2. Why not? Excuse me. And so that actually improved this. So anyway, I went away and I taught him all these moves so that he could have them available to him when I gave him a different weapon. And that was so much fun. I remember spending days, I remember a Saturday, just having nothing else really to do on the Saturday, but I would spend hours on the Saturday. I would play for a couple of hours, have a break, come back, and just go through the battles. I mean, your XP you gained was not an awful lot for your moves that are called AP. You got maybe one or two per match if you were lucky. So you needed something like 160. So you were talking 18, 19 matches sometimes for these. But it was a grind, but it was worth it because your characters would also level up as well. It was just so much great fun. Then fast forwarding through, I didn't own a PS2, so I didn't get to play 10, I didn't play 11, I didn't play 12. My next kind of encounter with the series again, I kind of went way off into other consoles, but actually a little side note, eventually I went back and I got 6 when it was ported to PlayStation. I played it for a little bit and got lost, had no idea what to do and kind of gave up. The game kind of passed me by a bit. So I kind of forayed on a little bit. 13 came out, I played 13 out on my DS. I had the ports of 3 and 4. I actually finished 3. I really enjoyed 3. 3 was good fun. I finished it in the end. There was this one weird dungeon which really kind of throws you through a loop a bit, where you can't really get into it because there's this magical magnet force field that's blocking anything that's metal. So okay, your ship is wood, which is fine, but all your weapons you've gone through this entire game. Well, all these games you've acquired new weapons. You keep acquiring the more powerful weapon over time. Um, But the thing about this was that the only weapons that could get through were the weakest weapons, the weapons that weren't based on I suppose magnetic metals. So that's what you had to do. You had to then, because I'd sold all my rubbish weapons, I had to go back and try and find places where I could buy them, so I could get into this level. So basically, it meant you were fighting high level monsters who were kicking 7 levels of snot out of you, beating you to a pulp. But all you could do was tickle them with your little mithril dagger. And that was a bit of a challenge because that meant you had to basically spend some time. You had to change your store. You had to change your store. You had to change your classes for your characters. So you had mages on your team because you could still launch your high level magic. So that was kind of it. Your other characters were basically confined to healing your team. Your strongest, whoever your strongest melee character was at the time, would do damage. Um, and then your mage would be sole charge of wiping out the enemies. So that became a bit of a challenge. The boss in that was a bit of a difficult one. Um, that was such a great fun game. There wasn't really too much cryptic. That was the one kind of cryptic thing in the game which maybe needed a guide to get through. Um, 4, I got a bit far in, but I never finished it really. But 13 was really the big one, which I got on Xbox 360, which I really enjoyed. It was a bit of a departure though, because the first couple of discs you're going down a path. It's a path. There's a few branches, but they're dead ends, and they have treasure in them. But it's a linear path, um, which kind of, when you've played, you're not maybe you've played all these other games, the games that you're used to. It's just not there. Um, you're you're wandering through these pathways, and you're thinking, what's going on? Where's the open world? Why can't I take a punt and go over here or over there? But visually, it was great. Um, some puzzles, some bosses, some fights were a bit difficult to get your head round into. And this whole kind of fighting style that was pseudo turn based, where you could your weapons and your attacks did, you could stack up to 4 small attacks, or you could wait a whole time for your bar to go. So it was weird sort of active time battling thing from 9, where you had to wait for your time gauge to go up, and then you could attack rather than it being a turn. So the batting system was quite weird. You could kind of, I suppose, I think you could interrupt the bat. You could interrupt it and only choose to do 2 or 3 attacks. But you're basically, that was your turn out of the way. There was one battle I remember coming into the end of the second disc, which was a massive mammoth battle. You're against this thing that has like 4 heads and is raining all manner of nasty stuff onto your characters. And there was the strategy for beating it. Instead, the game became harder. You would take out 1 head, maybe 2, and then it started doing higher level magic damage. So then all its heads, the thing is, all its heads could attack you at once, could attack you in turn rather, and its body was also a separate character that could do damage, and could inflict status effects on you. Um, so basically, it got 5 turns to your 1, which was really mean, but it was a doable fight in the end. It took 40 minutes plus, but you could do it. That once you actually finally beat the heads, the faces, or whatever, they were doing the damage, and the boss body was launching the status effects. So once you got rid of the damaging things, you then had to just lay into it, and you had to make sure that you kept yourself protected and you didn't fall foul to any of the really bad status effects like zombie or anything like that. You didn't fall foul to a doom timer. But it really was quite an epic battle. And that was one of the ones that was one of these moments where I was like, you finally win, and you're like, yes. 50 minutes later, 40 minutes later, I've won this. Don't start it before dinner, because if you're playing it now, don't start it before your dinner when your dinner's in the oven, because your dinner's going to get burnt. It's one of these kind of fights. Um, but it was really good fun. Um, there were a few kind of side steps. Um, I'll get back to them in a minute. Um, the next major foray for me into this series was, well, I got eventually coming to PS2, PS2, sorry, PS4. I got the Final Fantasy X remaster, um, which I played a bit of and got stuck and never really truly got into that game. It wasn't really one of those games that I particularly enjoyed. I really wanted, because I was collecting the games. I wanted to play it, but it just didn't really strike a chord for me. But the other one I finished of the two I've ever beaten was Final Fantasy 15, and I really enjoyed that game. It was really good fun. The whole road trip element, the whole you could go around in the regalia and you could listen to the classic songs from the older games, was just, it was a nostalgia trip through music, and it was just one of these things that I really enjoyed as a game. Some levels and some missions were a little bit evil, a little bit, some of the monster the monster bounties were a bit mean. Even if you leveled up quite a lot, which I had done at the time, they could wipe you in a couple of hits, with this one sort of demon move, and it was like, okay, right. Um, then there was the whole idea of that in daytime there was the nice, fuzzy, easy to beat monsters, but at night time out came the big world destroying behemoth monster thing that with one hand could go bang, and that's you that's you pushing up the daisies, to begin with, and your character who drives the car wouldn't drive the car at night because he was scared, so someone else had to drive the car at night. And it would go dark, and you had the headlights on. You didn't know what was going to happen, and an enemy would just drop out or from the sky or pop up from the ground and stop the car, and you'd have to battle it. But I remember when I finally actually got to the point where I was strong enough to beat the dark monsters in the nighttime. It was such a thrill. It was brilliant, knowing that you could actually just lay into them and absolutely wipe them. Um, it was just great. There was also the kind of the junction, not quite the junction, but the drawing of magic from eight. We you had to go to a rock in the ground and you could draw the magic. Um, I love Final Fantasy VIII. That I quite liked that they brought that back, although some people may have hated it. Um, but the combat system was fun. It was different. It was that you couldn't really properly control your other character. You had to kind of give them commands, I suppose, and alter their fighting style, whether or not you wanted to go all out attack or be defensive. That was all you could really do, is give them a few commands, and then they just did their thing. Some of the touches in that game were brilliant, with the whole, and when you camped, you had to camp to save and to level up. You got to see the pictures that your guy with the camera had taken. So I really liked that. There were some nice touches, some fun missions, one or two iffy questionable characters in there, but um, it was just a brilliant game. I really enjoyed it. So like I said, there was a few side steps that I took. When I had the Wii, when I went back to Nintendo. They had Final Fantasy. They had was Crystal Chronicles, which was, just a kind of a weird departure. Really, you had to protect it. It was more of a kiddie style. I think it's called chibi the style, and you had to protect this chalice, and you had to go to these trees, pick up some water from the trees, um, and filling the chalice protected you from the outside world, which would damage you. Um, and you could play. But the good thing about this is you could play up to 4 player. Um, but if you're playing by yourself, you had a Moogle companion, and the Moogle companion would hold the chalice. But the Moogle would complain and complain. Ah, my hands are getting tired. Can you lift the chalice now? And it got annoying. My friend and I, we got to the end, and kind of the weird kind of cyclical nature of the game, where some levels were available at some points in the time, and some cycles, and sometimes other levels were available in a different cycle, and it was just kind of a weird way of going through. But eventually, we got to the end um, through mostly perseverance, uh, more than anything else, and it just it was a fun game, but all in all, it wasn't really for me the best in the series. I didn't particularly enjoy it that much. I didn't have it was just pure fantasy. Um, it didn't have the kind of so much the dark gritty stuff as what were in the other games that were now on PlayStation. It was all right. Um, Not my favorite. And then I got the follow up, and the follow up was awful. The follow up was the worst game for me that I ever played in the series. I never played any tactics games, so I can't mention them. But I just didn't like the follow up to Crystal Chronicles. For me, it was terrible. It looked like, and it played like a port of the DS game with the 2 screens on the home screen on your TV screen, and it was just pants. I really didn't like it. Um, but that seemed to end on that kind of note. But uh, that's my long video. And thank you if you've watched the video in its entirety. Um, but that's kind of it's almost half an hour of a video. But that's what my memories of Final Fantasy were from way back to about now. So if you have any fond memories of that, let me know in the comments below. And let me know what was your favourite Final Fantasy game. Um, Mine, I think, would probably be 9. I think 9 just edges it for me. Maybe not a popular choice, maybe 7, maybe for a lot of other folk. But let me know in the comments below what your favourite game was in the series. And thank you for watching.